My name is Caporal Henri Delmas, 2nd Company, Brigade des Chasseurs, attached to the garrison of Fort Vaux, outside Verdun. When I arrived on May 31st, 1916, the fort was already a tomb. The air inside felt damp and metallic, thick with the smell of rust and sweat. The walls seeped moisture. Water dripped from ceiling cracks into metal buckets that never emptied. The only light came from flickering lanterns. Electric power had been cut by German artillery days earlier. Outside, the world thundered without pause. We heard the German guns long before we ever saw a German soldier. The artillery bombardment was constant. Sometimes a slow drumbeat, sometimes a violent roar that shook dust from the stone arches and sent pebbles skittering across the corridor floors. "Verdun is hell," the lieutenant told us. "No, hell is cleaner," one of the older sergeants replied. Both statements were true. The Germans attacked at dawn. At first, we only heard shouting carried by the wind, then the rattle of MG-08 machine guns, then the sharp, wet impacts of rifle bullets hitting the fort's exterior. Scouts reported that soldiers from the German 50th Infantry Division were advancing through shell holes and trenches barely recognizable as terrain. We manned the firing slits. The first face I saw was that of a young German grenadier, climbing over a mound of shattered concrete, rifle slung, grenade in hand. I fired before I could think. My Liebel kicked hard. He fell backward into the dust. There was no satisfaction in the shot, only a kind of numb surprise that I was still alive. Our commanding officer, Commandant Sylvain Reynal, moved through the corridors with a stick in one hand and a gas mask slung at his side. His uniform was torn from crawling through debris, but his voice carried authority. "Hold every gallery. Conserve ammunition. Water is limited. No waste." Water. We learned quickly that water, not bullets, would be the true currency of survival. By midday, German stormtroopers had reached the top of the fort. They began dropping grenades and flamethrower nozzles into ventilation shafts. Smoke and heat poured into the corridors. Men coughed, gagged, clawed at their shirts. A flame burst through a breach and set a wooden table ablaze. One man screamed, "They're burning us alive!" For a moment, I believed him. By June 2nd, our canteens were empty. The fort's main cistern had been ruptured by shell fire. All remaining water was rationed to a few cups a day. Our tongues felt swollen, lips cracked until they bled. Men licked condensation off the walls, scraping green moss with their fingernails, desperate for moisture. The wounded begged for water we did not have. One soldier, barely 19, whispered, "Just a sip. Please, just wet my lips." But we couldn't. If we shared water with the wounded, none of us would survive long enough to fight. Outside, explosions shook the concrete like distant earthquakes. Inside, the air was cruelly hot, over 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees Fahrenheit in some corridors, because of the flamethrower jets and smoke trapped underground. We tried to fight from chamber to chamber, closing metal doors behind us to contain smoke or fire. But the fire always came, and the Germans always followed. On June 3rd, the Germans breached the northeastern gallery. That tunnel became a slaughterhouse. We fought them at ranges of only a few meters. Muzzle flashes illuminated faces twisted in fear. The metallic smell of cordite mixed with sweat, and the sickly, sweet odor of burned flesh. My bayonet snapped against a steel helmet. I switched to my revolver, a Model 1892, and fired until the chamber clicked empty. Another French soldier hurled a grenade down the corridor. Its blast stunned us all, leaving ears ringing and dust swirling like fog. When the smoke cleared, I saw a German soldier slumped against the wall, hands clutching his throat as blood pulsed between his fingers. He looked no older than 16. He tried to speak, maybe calling for his mother. The war had turned children into corpses long before their time. That night, the lights finally died. We fought by candlelight and the dim glow of burning debris. Shadows jumped across the walls like ghosts. Rats scurried over sleeping men, searching for scraps. They were fearless. The constant gunfire meant nothing to them. Commandant Raynal scribbled reports by hand, sending them through underground passages with carrier pigeons, the last reliable communication we had. One of his pigeons, Valiant, would later carry a message that became famous. We are still holding, but suffering terribly. The enemy is at the gates. We require immediate relief. The message was real, and so was our suffering. By the morning of June 7th, we had been fighting without water for nearly a week. Our mouths felt like sandpaper. Our vision blurred. Some men hallucinated, seeing rivers on the walls, imagining rain falling from the ceiling. The Germans launched their final assault at dawn. Flamethrower teams blasted fire into the ventilation ducts. Smoke rolled through the galleries, choking us. We coughed until our ribs felt like they were breaking. One soldier, delirious, ran toward the flames with his arms open, screaming for water. He died without a sound. We regrouped in the central chamber, fewer than 60 men left capable of holding a rifle. Commandant Raynal looked at us with hollow eyes. He whispered only 2 words, "C'est fini." It is finished. At 7 a.m., Raynal wrote his final message. At 7:30, he ordered the ceasefire. We surrendered. When the Germans entered the fort, many of us could barely stand. They gave us water, not out of mercy, but necessity. Prisoners were useless if they died. I remember the first gulp. It tasted like life and death all at once. I survived Verdun. Many did not. When I visited Fort Vaux years later, the walls still bore the scars of fire. Ventilation shafts were still blackened. The stones still felt cold to the touch, as if remembering everything that had happened inside. People speak of Verdun as a symbol of French endurance. But for those of us who lived it, Verdun was something else. A graveyard of youth, hope, and sanity. And the longest night of our lives